of night, do you remember? Hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found love lying by your side. The final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found love lying by your side.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Oh my God. Welcome back. Our lovely assistant there, Mr. Keith Grieve, bringing us back in with some nice industrial house music. How do you like me now? Anyway, we've just had a half hour of Colts talk with George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin. In the second half of the show, I'd like to welcome our guest, Patrick Beaulieu, host of The Big Ticket. Patrick is one of two podcasting dudes riding the tasty waves of life, talking sports. It's the show produced north of the border, but made for all of us. You can follow him on Twitter at Big Ticket Show. That's at Big Ticket Show. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you very much for the warm welcome, Jim.
You know, given the fact that you're from up north, it's the least I can do. Patrick, I got to tell you, I'd like to have you explain to the listeners what it is that you guys do on your podcast, because it's very interesting to me, because it's definitely not what we do.
Well, during the football season, myself and Chris Leach, my co-host and producer extraordinaire,
lovely assistant. He's a
lovely assistant. Yes, the furry Buddha, the wise one. Us, along with our handicapping expert, Mr. Parlay, Tyler Eggett, we run down every single game in the NFL for every week. We make our picks, and not only we make picks, but we also add a little flavor to it. We like to call it wagertainment. So Mr. Parlay is obviously the expert. He's the one who makes the big bucks doing this thing, but me and Chris like to throw in our extra flavor to it. We have a good time. It takes, picking games is always fun, and cracking each other up and making a few jokes here and there along the way is always really good too. So we do that, and then usually in the off season, we're open game. We like to talk UFC, Major League Baseball, whatever. We're all sports junkies. It doesn't matter. An interesting topic, we're jumping on it, and like to keep it fun, loose and fun. Jim, you know us.
Absolutely, and because you guys are Canucks, hockey's obviously a big thing for you guys.
Yeah, we hit the hockey, although not as much. Sometimes we just get so inundated with it up here. Me and Chris are, we're just football-loving guys. We love, all the other stuff too, and obviously hockey is. I mean, you're born with it. I mean, you're born with a stick and puck in your crib. You can't escape it up here, and it's religion for us. It's just the way it is for Canadians, but. So we like to hit the other stuff, but obviously you got to talk hockey up here. You just have to.
Indeed, and certainly you do here in Chicago with our Blackhawks. And I'm not trying to, jibe you or anything like that. But today, you and I get the pleasure of talking Buccaneers, and a big reason is because, and I wanted you on the show to talk about, is because you are a passionate fan. And on your own site, you, from time to time, write about them. And for the last couple seasons, you vented a little bit, for lack of a better word.
Well, can you blame me?
No, not at all. I mean, we all know what happened last season and the few seasons before. And last season was strange because even though, everybody last year really thought the Buccaneers would be the turnaround team of the year. They hired Lovie Smith. And it just seemed, with the off-season acquisitions that they made, they turned over part of the roster, and suddenly you had guys that had good resumes on the team, and yet they still finished dead last in the league at 2-14. So, I don't know. Patrick, I'm going to ask you, what do you think happened?
Oh, if there was a simple answer to this, I wish I knew it. Maybe it's just...
But if it's one or two things, what do you think it is?
Well, first, if you're just going to look at on-the-field product positionally, that offensive line was an absolute disaster. There's no other way to put it. Anthony Collins was a complete bust as a left tackle, the guy they brought in from Cincinnati, a young guy they thought who was a part-timer before in Cincinnati. They thought he could take over the starter's role. It didn't work out. And obviously at the quarterback position, they paid the money to Josh McCown. They thought he'd be a veteran guy who could come in and help steer the ship after that, half season of just amazing quarterback play in Chicago. And he turned back into Josh McCown. I mean, it was, and we were all worried about it coming into the season. We said, hey, is this going to be the next Tommy Maddox? Looks good for half the season, gets himself paid, and then, he turns back into a pumpkin. It's obviously what happened. And I was surprised, I wasn't necessarily overly shocked that the offense didn't perform. It was more the performance of the defense. Because if you look up and down that roster, Gerald McCoy, Levante David, they lose Revis, they bring in Alteron Werner. Jonathan Banks is a nice young cornerback on the other side. I mean, there's definitely, they go out and sign Michael Johnson. There's lots of high round picks on that defense. And Lovie Smith with his pedigree coming in there, you think that's going to be a competitive defense. And even under Schiano, they played good, hard-nosed defense. Well, that obviously wasn't the case. I think a lot of guys struggled to grasp the cover two. I'm not really sure why. I think part of it was positional. They didn't fit. Mark Barron and Deshaun Goldson are basically the same guy. They're in the box safeties, and they got torched in coverage a lot. They kind of rectified that by the end of the season, but the offense was still a disaster. And by that point, losing's like a fungus, Jim. You can't get rid of it. It takes a long time to weed it out. Going into the season, though, hopefully Lovey's got things going more his way. And the other thing, too, I should mention, which was a huge factor, was losing Jeff Tedford. Coming into the season, Jeff Tedford, the new offensive coordinator, they thought he is a guy who's going to be able to take the offense in a new direction. He has to step aside because of health issues. And I think you really saw that Marcus Arroyo, the quarterback's coach who stepped in as offensive coordinator, he wasn't ready. He just flat out wasn't ready. That offense didn't look prepared a lot of times, disorganized, discombobulated, if you will. And, when we have one positional group not getting it done, it affects the other positional group, and I think that happened as well.
Besides using the word fungus on my show,
I've used worse.
You have, actually, but they do things differently up there. I was gonna, I was gonna say. I mean, there's everything you've pointed out. Tedford, people cannot underestimate the impact that had, because you look at this team and put the defensive numbers to the side for a minute. On offense, this was the 29th scoring offense in the league. I mean, if you can't do better than 17 points per game, I mean, you may not win a high school football game with that kind of output.
Well, 17 points a game in a league now where offense is so it's so biased towards. I mean, it's so hard to play defense. These cornerbacks can't touch any of the receivers, and yet somehow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to, defy the odds and become so inept offensively. It seemed every time they took a step forward, they would take two steps back, and it was just repeated. I mean, literally. I could have been a rich man gambling on them in certain situations, in game, because you knew as soon as a good play, where's the flag? The flag was coming out. You knew it every single time. Or if they made a big play coming down, here comes the turnover. And that's what losing teams do. And, like I said, the Tedford thing, Arroyo he was in over his head. And in over his head, offensive coordinator, overrated quarterback who wasn't any good, and bad offensive line. Well, I don't care how many Mike Evans, Vincent Jacksons you have. You're not going to get it done as an offense.
It's I mean, this was the 25th ranked defense, and they had a few games right there at the end of the season where the defense itself actually looked pretty good. But if you look at the overall body of work, it just wasn't there. So, Patrick, I want you to imagine that you are the general manager of the Buccaneers, and you are the vice president of scouting as well. Why they would trust you with these two great jobs, I don't know, but imagine that. Who do the Bucs draft with the number 1 overall pick?
Now, who do I think they're going to take, or who am I taking?
All right. Well, let's start off with who do you think they're going to take?
Right now, as it stands, unless Jameis Winston does something spectacularly stupid, and I'm not going to put it past him, judging on his past record, I think they're going with Jameis Winston. One, because this team has never had a franchise quarterback, ever. They won a Super Bowl with Brad Johnson. He was a good veteran guy, but he was not a face of the franchise. a John Elway, Joe Montana kind of guy. They've never had that. And, frankly, they need it, right? Now, is Jameis Winston that guy? Oh, boy. There's about 1,000 reasons why he isn't, and then there's 1,000 reasons why he is. I think that's the way they're going to go, is they're going to go out and reach and get that quarterback. They came out this week, Jason Light coming out saying, there's a difference between a bad guy and being immature. And yeah, that's true. There's a difference between being a bad guy and being immature. But you know what? If I'm taking the face of my franchise, a guy, quarterback, and everything just funnels through that person, I don't want either. And save me all the stuff about being a college player. There's a time to grow up and realize your position. Now, on the field, Jameis Winston can do it all. He's got great pocket awareness. The moment never seems too big for him. He is mature on the field. I know he threw a lot of interceptions last year, but, part of that was he didn't have Kelvin Benjamin and maybe didn't trust his receivers. Maybe he's trying a little too hard. He's everything that you want on the field. It's just the off-the-field questions, and we know now in the NFL that's such a big, big part of the game. You don't want to run into another Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson sort of situation where you're all over the headlines. I mean, that the NFL wants to stay as far away from all this stuff as they can. And the other factor is too, there's nobody in the stands in Tampa Bay right now. Jameis Winston from Florida, played at Florida State. It's not that far away from Tampa. That could be factoring into the decisions. Now, different things have happened. Maybe they see something from Marcus Mariota. That's the big unknown. Mariota's on the flip side. He has, the temperament. Everyone raves about him as a person. It's just we don't know what he's going to look like in a real NFL offense. I mean, that Oregon offense is really, really hard to project what he's going to look like. So do you go – I mean, both quarterbacks have, are huge question marks.
So I got a feeling you might have a different take if it were you making the decision.
But if there was a guy – if I was overwhelmed by an offer to trade back in that first round to maybe – say Philadelphia, and I'm not necessarily believing in all these rumors. The Chip Kelly rumors that he's got his man crushing Marcus Mariota and he wants to bring him in and run that Oregon offense, fully in the NFL with Mariota. But if they came in with a Godfather offer for that number one pick, maybe you listen. You move back in the draft, you go out and you draft yourself a guy like Lyle Collins from LSU. You get yourself a left tackle in the back end of that first round. And then in the second round, maybe you go get a Bryce Petty. Maybe you look at Brett Hundley. I don't know. I mean, these are questions that are going to be answered. You got to see what these guys are like too. Both of them have questions at the quarterback position. But because if you swing and miss at quarterback with that number one overall pick, man, is it ever hard to make up for later on.
That's the truth. That's for certain the truth. Well, that's a fresh perspective. I would say the biggest thing going for Jameis Winston is the fact that he runs a pro-style offense as opposed to the option that Mariota is running. And you could at least say that on day one he's familiar with the concepts and the sorts of things that he'll be shown. It's more or less that he needs to get up to speed with the personnel, and he's going to have some great